At the request of Mr. Scott Stone, who has commented this several times, Buffalo Jet fan, I've asked you this before and you never replied. How about you do a show when you go through every JD draft pick and free agent move? You won't do it because you know the inevitable results. Well, I'm going to do it in two separate videos. Here is every Joe Douglas draft pick sans the 2023 draft. So I have three different draft classes to grade 26 draft picks. I'm going to break them up into five different categories. Certified steal, which means that other GMs are up at night regretting not taking the player that Joe Douglas got. We have a hit, which is just a good pick that you don't regret. Maybe there were better options on the board, but you don't regret the pick. Incomplete. Now, obviously, okay, you could argue almost all of these are incomplete because we're talking about guys who have played 1, 2, or 3 years. So if me giving opinions about guys who have only been in the league a couple years is not something you agree with, this video will probably frustrate you. Just a warning off the top. But I gave myself a maximum of 4 players out of the 26 that I can give an incomplete grade to, just so I don't do too much sitting on the fence. A miss is the opposite of a hit. It's not a disaster, but there's obvious better directions that you could have gone. And then, of course, a bust is a bust. All right, let's get it going. I'm going to go in order of draft picks, so like from highest pick to lowest pick, order of rounds. So you know where we got to start. Wish it could be some other way because it always gets so emotional talking about Zach. Yeah, he was the highest pick we've had this century, and it's debatable about whether or not he can be a backup by year 3. Now, you might say, hey, wait a minute. Mike LaFleur ruined him. And to that, I would say, okay, maybe. Maybe Zach Wilson would have been good without Mike LaFleur, but we're not grading Zach Wilson. We're grading Joe Douglas, who hired Mike LaFleur, who had the plan of there was going to be no backup quarterback, all that. So heavy weighs the crown of general manager when you're investing that kind of draft capital in the quarterback. Everything falls on you. It's a complete ownership position. And 2 years in, the Jets had to give up 2 premium picks and fork over $100 million to replace the second overall pick. Any way you slice it, whoever you want to blame, they were all either picked or hired by Joe Douglas. It's a bust so far, undeniably. Next, Sauce Gardner, certified steal. How can you be a certified steal when you were picked number 4 overall? Well, because I think 2 of the teams that picked ahead of them, Stingley and Travon Walker, I think in a couple of seasons, they will be looking back and saying, damn, we could have had the best corner in the NFL. All pro by year 1. That is a certified steal. I think he's the second best player in the draft. I think you could argue at his position, he'll be better than Aiden Hutchinson, but because Aiden Hutchinson is an edge and did have 9 sacks in his own right, I do think we got the second best player in the draft. Sauce Gardner, defensive rookie of the year, certified steal. Next, his co-rookie of the year, Garrett Wilson, pick number 10. Yeah, I think I was making the argument at the time when I was doing mock drafts for this draft class that the Jacksonville Jaguars go ahead and get Trevor Lawrence, an elite wide receiver, in Garrett Wilson. And I think if they could do it over, they'll never tell you. I'm sure they love Trayvon Walker, but if they could do it over, they might take G-Dub number 1 and pair him with Trevor. Had 1,100 yards with no quarterback, subpar coaching offensively, no offensive line, unbelievable. He has no ceiling. Now with Aaron Rodgers, I think you could see minimum a top 10 receiver in the league. And he and Sauce weren't even the top players at their position taken. Stingley and Drake London went before them, and both of those GMs are going to come to regret that pretty soon. Ain't no way there are 9 better football players in the draft than Garrett Wilson. Certified steal. Next, Elijah Vera Tucker. I'm going to call him a hit. He's could end up being an all pro, but can I call him a certified steal? I would say not quite yet. Now, the Jets, remember, they traded 2 third-round picks to come up. So we're talking we spent a first rounder and 2 third rounders. Now, are there any GMs in that draft class that are looking and saying, damn, we should have taken AVT? That is a stacked draft class. Talk about Micah Parsons, Patrick Surtain, J.C. Horn, Devonta Smith, Jamar Chase. Any of those teams regretting they took those players instead of AVT? No. But you got a plug-and-play guard for the next decade who has an all-pro ceiling and can be a break glass in case of emergency tackle. Right now, he's a hit. If he goes on to be like Alan Faneca, Hall of Famer. Okay, we can bump him up to certified steal, but he has cleared the hurdle of hit, even though it was very pricey for the position of guard to go ahead and get him. Next, Mekhi Becton, busts. I'm not going to make a ton of excuses or hedge my bets here, guys. It's pretty straightforward. He hasn't even played a full season's worth of games. It's been 3 years. Even if he balls out this year, you know, half of his rookie contract, you got no value out of it with a top 15 pick. So, and there are obvious players, Tristan Wirfs, that we could point to that would have been a clear cut, better selection. I'm not grading the process. A lot of people had Mekhi Becton as a highly rated offensive tackle. Personally, I wanted CeeDee Lamb in that draft, so I didn't have a dog in the fight between Becton and Wirfs, but it's a result-oriented business. The result has just not been good. That's a bust so far. Next, Jermaine Johnson. Hit, which Scott, the gentleman who requested the video, is saying Jermaine Johnson was a bust so far, which to me is kind of an asinine thing to say. Now, he could end up being a certified steal, but he didn't have the requisite snaps to prove that. But I already saw a football player who, on a snap per snap basis, was as effective as any rookie edge rusher. If you were to give him the amount of snaps that Aiden Hutchinson had and prorate his sack rate, he would have had 11 and a half, 12 sacks. Now, is he Aiden Hutchinson? No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, and also 94th percentile in terms of run stop rate, already an elite run defender on a snap per snap basis. And if he can be a player who can get you 7, 8 sacks on top of that, which he undoubtedly can, I'm not going to ding him for playing in the deepest edge room in the NFL. If you have eyeballs, you saw a good football player. Jermaine Johnson is a hit. Next, Elijah Moore. Miss. You know, I'll stand by this one. I'll stand by his talent for at least one more year. You don't get to stand for draft picks forever. So if he flames out in Cleveland, it is what it is. I just overrated him, but I was, his personality stuff aside, I was looking forward to seeing him in this offense with Aaron Rodgers. I thought he could have done some good stuff. Now, I'm not going to say it's a complete bust because you did get 80 catches and 1,000 yards out of him in 2 years, and you were able to recoup some of the draft capital that you spent on him, even though you got back 40 cents on the dollar. So not a complete bust, but obviously you move on from a high second round pick after 2 years. That's got to be a miss. Next, Breece Hall. I had this as hit because I really want it to be objective, but I'm sorry. We have eyes. He was unbelievable. He was an offense unto himself in certain games, just under 6 yards per carry behind that offensive line. There will be GMs who rue the day they took Mick Johnson or whoever, linebacker guard, instead of Breece Hall at the top of the second round. The kid's a certified steal. No apologies. Is what it is. You watched him play. Next, Denzel Mims. Bust. It's his third offensive staff, and rumor has it he's not off to a great start with Hackett. He's not even showing up to OTAs, so I think maybe he can catch on as a backup somewhere, but I mean, he hasn't even been able to get on the field. And yes, Michael Floor is to blame. I talked about that before, but Michael Floor and Elijah Moore didn't get along, and Elijah Moore was still at least on the field, contributing, making plays, demonstrating some sort of talent as a second round wide receiver. Denzel Mims can barely even get on the field as a second round pick. That's a bust. Now, here are my 4 cop-outs. It starts with Jeremy Ruckert, and I kind of included them all in there. So Jeremy Ruckert got a redshirt year dealing with a foot injury. I don't know. Cam Clark, mid-round pick, suffered a devastating injury, had to retire. Michael Carter, first year, looks like a certified steal. Second year, looks like a bust. I have no damn idea. And then Jamie and Sherwood, I mean, he's still on the team as a 5th-round pick, and obviously they think he could be a contributor, so I can't really say he's a miss, but I haven't seen him do anything enough to call him a hit. So those are my 4 just cop-outs, incomplete grades, but those are the only 4. Everybody else I'm going to slap a grade on. So moving into the 3rd round, is this Jabari. I didn't put their names on here, so this is going to test as we get deeper into these drafts. It's going to test to see if I remember these guys. Jabari Zuniga, yeah, he played 1 year, 2 years, and then just never caught on with any other team as a 3rd-round pick. If you're not even at a minimum as a 3rd-round pick, you have to be a high-quality backup at a premium position to be a good pick, and he wasn't even that. So that is a straight-up bust. Next, Ashton Davis, same kind of deal. I think that if he didn't have the scholarship of being a third round pick, he would have been cut a long time ago. And I don't really know if he's still on the team. I question what kind of dirt he has on Joe Douglas, because he's not even a really good backup. He plays special teams. Have you ever seen him make a huge difference on special teams? As a third round pick, that's a bust. Next, Michael Clemens hit. I think in a couple years, he might be saying certified steal as a fourth round pick, but already right away, as a fourth round pick, he looked like he belonged in the NFL. He was an excellent run defender immediately. Really excited to see him at defensive tackle. I think if I do this, 2 years from now, we're slapping a certified steal on him. But he has already cleared the threshold of he's going to be at a minimum a high quality rotational defensive lineman in the fourth round. That's a hit. Next, LaMichael Pirine. Sorry, Green Bean. This is a certified bust, man. Dude played, I don't think he even started a game, and he's not in the NFL anymore. So that's a bust. Injuries played a role, but that's a bust. Next, Max Mitchell. If I had a fifth incomplete spot, he might go there. But if I have to pick between hit or miss, I will go hit. And obviously, positional value and draft pedigree are weighted here. So if he was a second round pick, maybe I wouldn't see enough to say hit. But as a fourth round pick, tell me if I'm wrong, but I think Max Mitchell demonstrated as a rookie that he can at least be like a pretty good swing tackle in the NFL. And that's pretty valuable for a late fourth round pick with the potential to be maybe an average starter. He was thrown in there right away against Baltimore, and just like Clemens, looked like he belonged in the league. I'm going to call that a hit. James Morgan, outside of the heroic Kenny Yeboah preseason Hail Mary touchdown pass, played no role on your team. Also out of the league. That's a bust. Michael Carter II. This is a certified steal in the fifth round here, getting one of the best slot cornerbacks in the NFL, which is now it's a starting position. He's on the field 75% of the snaps. You never hear his name called. Really good in the run fit. Just excellent football player. Obviously, many GMs are looking at their draft picks rounds 1 through 5, and they don't have 5 picks better than Michael Carter. That is stamped certified steal right there. Bryce Hall. Dude, it's so weird. All right, because before last year's draft, I was staving off people on Twitter who were telling me that we didn't need to draft Sauce Gardner, who was my preference, although at the time I had him at 10, which I guess now seems a little unrealistic, but I wanted Sauce at 10 for like the longest time. And Kayvon Thibodeau at 4, just for whatever that's worth. So Joe Douglas did better than me, surprisingly there. But they were telling me we didn't need Sauce Gardner because we had Bryce Hall. And yeah, maybe we overrated Bryce Hall because he was one of the only few decent players on a horrific defense in 2021. But dude, he's got decent tape. He was a fifth round pick. And I think on a lot of teams, he could be a low end corner too. I think he's a bad starter, but still a good backup. And all of a sudden he gets beat by Kyle Pitts in a preseason game, and then gets beat by a perfect throw by Lamar Jackson where his hand is on the ball and the receiver catches it, and then he gets like benched, and now Bryce Hall just completely sucks. No, if you're a fifth round pick, he's still a good backup corner. The Jets have one of the deepest corner rooms in the NFL. He's a starter on a bad defense. He's still a good backup. He's still hanging around. That's a hit to me. It's not a certified steal, but that's a hit. Next. Oh boy, is this Hamza? This is Hamza. All right, Hamza Nasruddin. That's a miss. Just pretty much a practice squad level player. I think at least if he hung around as a consistent special teamer and backup at this point, I'd call him a hit. You could argue there's a spot for him on incomplete, but we're only doing 4 of those. So I'm going to call Hamza a miss to this point. As beleaguered as the Jets' depth at linebacker has been, if he was worth his salt, he probably could have stamped out a role somewhere in there. That's a miss. Jason Pinnock, miss, but not because of the talent. I think if the Jets just kept him and cut, I don't know, Will Parks or Ashton Davis, I think this would be a hit because he was, I think, a decent backup safety. He started 4 games for a pretty good defense with the Giants. So I think it's a miss just because he's not on the team after 1 year, but kind of mistake to cut him, in my opinion. I think we had a hit and we let him go. Brandon Echols, hit, just like Bryce Hall. Excellent backup corner. late day 3 in the draft, I think just like Bryce Hall on some bad rosters, he'd be starting. And we have a good roster. So he's a backup. That's a hit. Love Brandon Eccles. He stayed so prepared. Remember, he came in Cleveland when Sauce was out for a couple plays and they went right at him. 2 targets in the end zone right away. Him versus Amari Cooper breaks them both up. And then we end up winning that game. We don't win that game if he doesn't do that. I love Brandon Eccles. I think we might be looking back later and saying certified steal. Maybe he goes on somewhere else to get a starting opportunity because our corners are so good. But right now, we'll call him a hit at the very least. Braden Mann, a bust. I think if, like, I know it's kind of harsh because it's the 6th round and it's a punter. And actually, if you look at his average punting stats, they're not too terrible. But the shanks and then the 2 line drives that directly led to touchdowns last year that cost us games, and the stubbornness of the Jets to not just move on and get a better punter is a bust for me. Jonathan Marshall, miss. Got scooped up off of our practice squad by Pittsburgh, and then he never really caught on there. So he's probably going to be a practice squad, borderline out of the league guy as a 6th round Raz score dart throw. So can't call that a hit. That's a miss. All right. So those are all of the picks. I won't include these in the final tallies, but I did find it worth mentioning that Joe Douglas did go ahead and snag Bryce Huff and Bam Knight in the undrafted free agency pool, who are 2 guys who should be contributing members on this football team. Bryce Huff, obviously an excellent 3rd down situational rusher, and Bam Knight, he could be our running back too. He's got as good of a chance as anybody, and I think he is at least a lock to make the roster, which is a steal for an undrafted free agent. Let's look at the totals there for you, Scott. So 4 certified steals, 6 hits, my 4 incompletes, 4 misses, and 8 busted picks. I did my best to be objective and honest, and we'll talk ball soon. Go Jets.